Good day, and welcome to another edition of the X Review version of Ibma Mungo's perspective on global affairs. Before we continue, I urge you to please press the like button, and if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. The X Review version is where I take deep dives into geopolitical stories that come into my X strand and X feed, because as you all know, X is now the #1 leading platform for news in 150 countries, and it is a place where all sides of the opinion, all sides of the media strand and narrative have where to put their news. Anyway, let's go straight and look at the first news within my news feed today. I have here, the first news I have here is one that talks about all previous Western components have been replaced. The XJ-100 is a 100% sanction-proof aircraft. It's obviously a Russian aircraft. It was just launched recently. It was launched. It was in development. This plane, the SJ-100, and I think the MC, yes, they are Russian planes that were in development when the war broke out and there were sanctions against Russia. They had components, their landing gear, their engine, quite a lot of the components of these planes were Western supplied. But because of the sanctions, they couldn't get access to them again, and then they now had to start to develop their own Russian variants of them. Russia has a very capable aircraft industry. We know that the Soviets had a very capable aircraft industry, but they had lost ground and they felt that they needed Western components. But this Ukrainian war has made them know now that they needed to have their own local capacities, and it has shown the innovation of the Russians. The only constraint they have now is that most of their manufacturing is geared towards the manufacture of military aircraft, but otherwise they now have replaced almost all the components. In fact, Russia at this point in time is the only country in the world that can produce a plane from start to finish with all the local components, both military and domestic and commercial for passenger. So let's go to the next story now. President Trump was in Japan. He had a very good time in Japan, and he visited the troops, American troops in Okinawa. Japan has been occupied by American soldiers since the peace treaty of. They didn't even have a treaty. The peace agreement of 1945 after the defeat of Japan. And America has first occupied them to keep them close by, but as China has become a very resurgent power in the Pacific there, they've also become very useful in one, protecting Japan, and then two, projecting America's power and influence, especially as tensions rise about Taiwan and China's attempt to take Taiwan. So the bases, American bases in Japan was visited by the American president. He has had a very extensive Asian tour. After attending the ASEAN conference, he now went and visited Japan and met the emperor, met with the new prime minister, met with the troops on an aircraft carrier, and they were very happy to have him. He projects American power, but obviously this particular tweet here is about how the Japanese prime minister is very happy to be to be addressing occupier troops. But anyway, they don't see them as occupier troops. They see them as people who are protecting them against the growing influence of China. Japan is very vulnerable and afraid of China because of the misdeeds, their misdeeds during the period when they occupied China from 1931 to when they lost the war in 1945. So China's growth is a very big worry for them and America there. But America, President Trump really asserted American power in this visit. He went to the aircraft carrier, talked to the troops, rallied the troops, and met with the emperor, had a bilateral with the Japanese, and the next story too is still in that same. I think he has rounded up his visit here to the George Washington, the USS George Washington, and he was thanking the troops for an incredible evening on the U.S. Navy. We can see all the variants of American power. They are all their F-18 Hornet and all. One of the important things we should know is that America is not able to deploy some of its most powerful planes on their aircraft carriers as those ones that use electronic propulsion, where they have other plane systems too that they use on their aircraft carriers. And I don't recognize them. I'm not a military expert in this particular regard, but we can see Pieterske there, the Secretary of War, with him on that tour. We should know that America has 11 aircraft carriers and they use that in projecting power all over the world. Russia forces unveil cutting-edge robotic systems for frontline operations. These systems are set to tackle a range of critical tasks in the battlefield. Russia is just innovating and outputting different innovations all through. And this is one of them. This is they are bringing out drones. They are bringing out drone uh, automated tanks, all of this. They keep innovating, and we saw how recently they released, showed us their new nuclear-powered Boris-Vesnik, the cruise missile that can fly unlimited amount, just continue to fly and be a loitering weapon that can go anywhere in the world and cannot be stopped. So their innovation in drone technology, their innovation in submarine technology, in aviation technology is just one of the things that this war has given to the Russians. They will be very thankful for the war in the long run. In the West, preparation for a new large European war are not being hidden. Lavrov. France and the United Kingdom have created a sort of entente for development of missile systems. Germany has signed an agreement with the United Kingdom for military cooperation. The militarization of the European countries is gaining momentum. Large-scale exercises are being conducted, and logistics of troop transfers in the Eastern Front are being improved.
Из Лондона стали раздаваться голоса о предании этому.
Okay, so this is in Russian. Anyway, we saw that the French and the British have signed a cooperation to share their nuclear resources in case there's a war with Russia. The Germans have expanded. Yesterday in my video, we saw how the Germans are going to expand with a budget of 400 billion to build out so many of their military capabilities. They are falling under the nuclear umbrella of Germany, of Britain and France, and then they have signed cooperation with the British for observation of Russian submarines all across the North Atlantic, and even in Iceland, in the Arctic. Our military is already constantly hearing foreign languages on the radio along the front line. Kremlin spokesman Peskov on the potential deployment of French contingent to Ukraine. So these foreigners are there. We are eliminating them. Yes, it was announced that the French are planning to send contingent of some soldiers, but they are saying that they will do that under the framework of the security guarantees after a ceasefire. The Russians have said no to it. But we should know that the Russians have been identifying and targeting where foreigners are located within Ukraine. And sometimes when they take these actions against the foreigners.
Касается информации службы внешней разведки России, она тревожная, хотя с другой стороны наши военные зарубежную речь, иностранные языки в рациях слушают постоянно на линии соприкосновения, то есть эти иностранцы там есть.
Yes, the Russians have been shooting out and destroying most of the hotels and all the places where they could find foreign instructors and foreign mercenaries, and they've done a good job of eliminating a lot of them using their Iskander missiles. Sometimes, I think there was one in Poltava that took out a lot of Danish soldiers and Swedish soldiers and Swedish instructors. They continue to attack them. The Ukrainian Foreign Legion contingent was very large at one time, but the Russians have killed quite a lot of them, that many of the mercenary forces have decided to leave completely. Their foreign contingent is much smaller. Las Vegas police launched Tesla Cybertruck fleet with live drone support. Interesting. Deployment of the Cybertruck. We saw how Kadyrov once tried to use the Cybertruck in the Ukraine war, but he found it to be very hard. I think it was disabled by Elon Musk. The other day I was riding around Austin and I saw a cyber truck in the livery of the fire department. But obviously now it seems like Las Vegas wants to use a cyber truck um, as a police vehicle. I live in Austin here, Austin, Texas. I see them being developed every day. I see them being shipped all over the world. Because right next to where I live in Huddle, there's a distribution center for the site for the Teslas, and it's all over. The Tesla has a very big presence in Austin, Texas here. So this is a story that shows the American technology. I always say that one of the domains, one of the people, companies that keeps America very high up there in the manufacturing space is Elon Musk's various companies. The one he has in Starlink that is doing something that no other company is doing in the world. Low Earth broadband services. He has the Cybertruck, which is a car like no other in the world because this car is almost bulletproof. We should remember. And then he also has SpaceX. Let's go now to the Russia's new nuclear-powered cruise missile explanation on why infinite flight range and duration is needed. It's just fly around in the air defense detectors across the world. The Boris version is causing a lot of worry for most of the military planners all over the world. The very fact that the missile is propelled by a nuclear engine makes it almost impossible to stop, and it goes around the whole world. It cannot be stopped by air defenses because the way they incorporated some of the modern technologies of cruise missiles, Russian cruise missiles, which is they have the ability to continue to change in the air and avoid air defense systems. Well, let's move to Cameroon. Violent protests. We don't get too many African stories in my news strand, but they do come up. Paul Biya has been the president of Cameroon since the death of Ahidjo, the last president who was President Ahidjo. And that's been a long time ago, I think in the 80s, 1980s. Violent protests erupt in Cameroon after 92-year-old President Paul Biya wins his eighth term with 53% of opposition claims Issa Chiroma actually won with 70%. Yes, this is a common refrain in Africa. We tend to have political disagreements in some countries where the incumbents are very strong. They hold on to power for a very long time and they don't let go. So sometimes we have such scenes like this. And unfortunately, in the geopolitical space, it's scenes like this that are exploited by financial centers in London and France to devalue currencies and say that the African countries' economy and their currency is not stable. So for that reason, they devalue it. So Africa pays a big price anytime they have political crisis like this. The currency will be devalued, and that ultimately means that the resources, being that Africa is a very resource-rich continent, their resources are now bought on the cheap by the Europeans there, especially those Europeans that we call neo-colonialists. I know her. She's a critic of Zelensky. She had 2 million followers on YouTube. She was successfully taken down by the Ukrainian state because the Ukrainian state has a department that helps to hound any critic of Ukraine on the internet. Zelensky needs need money and war. For 3 years, Zelensky refused to any negotiation with Putin. Law banning negotiation is still in effect. Thousands of people were imprisoned. Hundreds of thousands died on the front lines. That's true, though. Zelensky still has a subsisting law that says that nobody can negotiate with Russia apart from him. And in this time now, when he's talking about a ceasefire and President Trump is talking about peace negotiations, it will be very incumbent on Zelensky to make sure that he takes that law down, but he hasn't taken it down, but yet he calls for a ceasefire, especially now that the Ukrainians are on the back foot. These are local stories. I'll move on to the one that Macron should send troops, not to Ukraine, but to guard the French museums. Yes, it was very embarrassing. Maria Zakharova is the spokesman of the Foreign Ministry of the Russian Federation, and Macron has been touting that he is going to send French troops Already we know French troops are in Ukraine fighting as instructors, and the Russians have been destroying a lot of them. But he's saying that they will be going now in the form of peacekeeping funds. Chief Ray, their head of Chief of Army Staff, also said that recently, and they are very ready to deploy. But so Marat Zakharova here is saying that they should be sending to guard the French Museum. French Museum was attacked recently, and there was a heist there. They lost some of the jewels of Princess Eugenie, the wife of Napoleon III, and so many other priceless jewels. So that there are no situations like with the Louvre. Macron is dreaming of a military intervention in Ukraine, according to the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. Yeah, it's not a hidden fact. He has been saying it for a long time. The Russians will not let it happen. In an amazing gesture, newly elected Prime Minister Takaichi is donating 250 cherry trees to President Trump's Washington, D.C. beautification. I will extend a gift of 250 cherry trees. They do have some of these trees already in Washington. When I go to Washington, I see, especially in spring, you see some of them. I think I think that I think that's the obelisk there, and this must be the Potomac. But I really don't know if they already. But I see some of them already in Washington. She really is doing everything to impress upon Trump. I think she impressed Trump a lot. Trump promised that he was going to give her anything she wanted when they had their bilateral. She looked very quiet and vulnerable. He did not project. I think Japan has a strategy in sending a woman, making a woman a prime minister. She was looking very vulnerable and protect someone you want to protect around Trump. And Trump definitely said, I'm going to protect Japan. I will protect and give you anything you want. It was not a strong occupier rhetoric. Viktor Orban says that from the United States to the Arab world and the Far East, most of humanity stands for peace in Central Europe. The pro-peace camp is growing, and economic challenge mounts in Europe. More nations will realize the truth. Peace is the only path forward. There's a big strand. Viktor Orban really wants peace. He says that he wants peace, but the European Union wants war, and it's just a problem for Europe and for the whole of Russia, Europe, and the whole of Europe at this point in time.
Körét figyelembe véve, az elsöprő többség a béke oldalán van. Hát az arabok mind, a távol-keletiek Kínával az élen szintén, indiaiak szintén, tehát az a nyugati ember érzékcsalódása, hogy azt hiszi, hogy rajta kívül, aki rajta kívül van.
There's been never a time when an American president has branded himself and shaped himself in the mold of a peacemaker, and President Trump, despite anything anybody might say about him, has actually caused a de-escalation of tensions in many regions, no less the one in the Middle East, and it is a very important thing that he has done. Bringing peace in Europe is one that is almost impossible for him to do because the Europeans are very intent in going into war with Russia. Viktor Orban, Robert Fico, and the new Czech Prime Minister are not in that particular camp. Russia's second domestically produced MC-21 passenger jet has completed its first flight in X2. This Far Eastern Siberian city is one of the cities that gives me a stump, and it's Irkutsk, successfully testing the D-14 engines and entire locally made systems. Like I said in the first report we had here, Russia has now shown its capacity to produce every single component of the aircraft all the supply chain is within Russia, and they now produce this. This was really hit by sanctions, and now they have replaced all the parts. They remain the only country that does that. If you remember now, we have Comac. Comac in China is trying to do something like this. But unfortunately for the Chinese, they have a lot of dependency on American parts and components, especially the engine. They've not been able to develop domestic commercial engines as the Russians have now done. And the Russians have another variant of an engine that can even fly bigger planes. But funny enough, they've designed a plane, but the engine, but they've not designed a plane yet to fly on that engine. India intends to continue purchasing Russian oil despite new U.S. sanctions. Bloomberg. Indian state-owned refineries are considering buying oil through smaller Russian traders who are not subject to restrictions, the industry. The sanctions against the strategy of sanctioning an oil company that does, and anybody who does business with that oil company has really created, nobody saw that coming. It has created so much confusion for people, for countries, because ultimately the oil company does have extensive a footprint all across the world, which is Rosneft and Luke Oil. And doing business with them now is an anathema by the latest American sanction regime by Trump. And this is a problem now for both Chinese and the Indians. So they are looking to how to solve that. In fact, Luke Oil itself is also thinking about divesting from most of the countries in the world. This is one of the great breakthroughs of the Chinese. China's Xinhua 20 crew is now approaching the end of their mission with over 180 days spent in orbit. The crew proceeds with experiment and equipment maintenance aboard the Tiangong space station while actively preparing for their return to Earth. We should really know what this space what the spacecraft, the Tiangong, represent to America, to the world. This is the first time that a country, one country on its own, defied the whole West. The International Space Program is the program of the whole West. It is the space station that they have created by every country with cooperation of Japan and all the countries of the West, Russia. But then Russia too was also part of that international space program. But the Chinese were specifically denied participation in that program by the American Congress. They threatened not to even give NASA any funding if they had the Chinese. The Chinese now built theirs. It's now the most modern, most capable, and it now does experiments for every country who want to cooperate with the Chinese. In fact, now the Chinese space program is leading in the world. This kind of sovereignty and self-reliance it's one of the things that continue to shock Americans. At every attempt to put down the Chinese from the domains that the Americans had controlled for over 50 years, the Chinese have created their own. And now that since they're coming into the game so late, theirs is by far more modern. The crew that is out there now is the Tiangong. They usually have a crew of 3 all the time. They stay in 6 months rotations, and then after that, another crew. So this is the crew of the Shenzhen 20. What do we have here? Obviously in the underground mountains city. Yeah, let's move on. China unveils Radar Reaper swarm drone. The PLA new system can autonomously detect, track, and destroy enemy radars in wartime. Production could reach 2 million. When you attack the radar, then you've made the enemy system completely blind. So that's a very good point. This is looking like a drone. This is looking like a Shahid 360 drone. Let's go. The Chinese continue to output a lot of military equipment the same way that the Russians are doing. What do we have here? Trump, we had a little conflict with Japan. You may have heard about it. Interesting. It was referring to the first and only use of nuclear weapons in human history, the U.S. atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which killed 200,000 civilians. Calling that a little conflict perfectly sums up Washington's arrogance and total moral rot. Well, it depends on how you judge it. Most times, most people in history feel that was a necessity to have done. In fact, at this point in time, some people are calling on President Putin to use that kind of solution to end the Ukrainian conflict. After all, the Russians have the largest fleet of nuclear weapons. Besides that, they have the Oreshnik. India signs a jet deal with Russia and defies Washington. Last week, before Putin lands in New Delhi, India's Hindustan Aeronautics Limited inked a pact with the Russian United Aircraft Cargo to co-produce the SJ-100 passenger jet, a move that doubles as a middle finger to the US. Yes, the Russians may have developed that plane that we saw in the very beginning of this report, but the Russians have a big problem with manpower in their aviation industry. Most of it has been moved towards the military industrial complex. So a partnership now with HAL will definitely be a very good one because there they will get the manpower to be able to. They have the know-how, the design, and the skills. I don't know where this will ultimately be taking place. India has been having a lot of problems with America, and America is trying to pressure India to buy new planes, but India is not, and India rather is deepening its relationship with Russia. Jeffrey Sachs is one of the big critics of the Russian war and ignorance the root stem. The Ukrainian conflict could end right now in the shortest possible time in Kiev, if Kiev choose a position of neutrality instead of joining NATO. Jeffrey Sachs. This is what Jeffrey Sachs has been saying repeatedly for a long time. Let us hear a little bit of what he says.
Part of Ukraine. What did the United States, Germany do? They ignored the treaty. The Ukraine war can end now based on neutrality of Ukraine. Just say it. Neutrality. Not.
Well, some people know what really is the problem, and that was NATO expansion, among many other things. But apart from NATO expansion, it was the treatment of the people of Donbass. But Jeffrey Sachs is one of the leading champions of the alternative media. He won't be giving access into the mainstream media because his opinion runs counter to the globalists and the neocons and the people who want war with Russia. So he has become a very big voice. He is very relentless. He could hold up to 10 interviews in a day in different platforms and channels, and he's very visible out there. We already know Jeffrey Sachs as a developmental economist, but he reinvented himself as a big critic of the Ukrainian war in the past few years. Today in Kiev, they mourned Olena Hobaneva, a cameraman, Yevgeny Kamazin, journalist, killed by the brutal Russian drone strike in Kramatorsk 4 days ago. Inside the church, grief and silence spoke. Yes, journalists are paying a very big price in this war. They get targeted because they have to put the word press on their armor vest, and some of the very unscrupulous drone pilots now target them. They kill Russian journalists just as much as they kill Ukrainian journalists. So obviously, this is a Ukrainian journalist that has just been killed. The joint Trinidad-Tobago military exercise have begun as a payoff. Yes, America's big push to invade Venezuela just took a little stopover in Trinidad and Tobago, and there's an aircraft carrier there. There are big destroyers there, and they're having a military exercise within that region. Venezuela currently has the most powerful army in Latin America, but it is also one of the most disorganized, with low salaries, frequent uprisings, low training, and dozens of officers. Venezuela's case is really bad. From being the richest and most powerful country in the whole of the Latin America to now being one that has been under a regime of sanction for over 20 years, it has begun to take a toll, like the kind of toll that happened to Syria. Now, Boris Johnson again can hit any target in the US. It's capable. They keep bringing more and more of these weapon systems, warning to America. The Russians are just good with missiles. That's what they decided to invest in. And because, of course, we know that even though they have a lot of planes, the Su-57, the Su-35, these are very capable weapons that have proven themselves. The MiG-31s and MiG-29s, but they know that they use the missile systems to make sure that if anybody brings an aircraft carrier close to them, they can just shoot them. So they are continuing to bring out more weapon systems. Russia's foreign intelligence claims that French troops are already positioned near Poland-Ukraine border, undergoing intensive combat training. Russia's sources express alarm, alleging that the French general staff is preparing around 2,000 soldiers. If they get into the war, they obviously will find out how hard. I think what they're saying is that they will be at the back, there in the rear, so that they will give some rear support services of the military kind, so that they can free Ukrainian soldiers to go into the front line for battle. Russia has been under sanctions for probably 125 years. Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Overchuk, we don't have any illusions about them. It's like climate, they're always there. But world economic focus is shifting towards the east. Artis Farida in Kuala Lumpur, yes, he attended the ASEAN and he was part of it. He went to look after Russia's interest. And it is very important to know that indeed, because of the centers of civilization now is now in the East, regarding the fact that Japan is very productive, Korea is very productive. They may be Western aligned for now, but you will get the sense that someday that alliance will break up. And it may just be the reason why President Trump was very intent on showing America's commitment and closeness to two very, very important allies who, if they somehow get neutral or break away from the Western orbit, will be a problem for America. And that's why he's visiting these countries in ASEAN and visiting the country of Japan and Korea. But indeed, China is now the big node in the East, and the Russians have decided to pitch their tent with them.
Now, the talks mainly focused on trade and cooperation, especially on how to make transport links and deliveries between countries faster, more efficient, more reliable and easier. Now, after the meetings, Overchuk held a press conference and told reporters that the world's economic focus is now shifting from the West to the East and that ASEAN is the perfect platform to discuss this shift. He pointed...
Indeed, it is really true. President Trump arrived at Akatsuki. He had a very good visit to Japan. Just as I was saying, you can see how the Japanese put forward a prime minister that is coy. Adimono is very nice, let's just say, and then she doesn't threaten President Trump in any form or manner. The Japanese are reinventing the, diplomacy in this time when they have a very unpredictable President Trump to deal with. So he visited her there in their own palace, their own form of the White House, and also met with the emperor and had a very good and rich visit to Japan. I'll just do two more stories and then we'll be out for today. Russia continues to make gains. Russia army makes gains in Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporozhye region. Unit of the Voskov battle group continued their offensive, hoisting Russian flags in three settlements: Yegorovok, Privolnoye, and Novonik. So, yeah, you can see the use of drones here, and we can see how the Russians are carrying their flags. They are making incremental increases in their movement in Zaporozhye and Dnipropetrovsk. These are not part of the four oblasts that they already... Zaporozhye is part of the four oblasts, but Dnipropetrovsk and Sumy and Kharkiv are not part of the four. So they continue to make advances in this. They have already said that if they do conclude this, they may go into Odessa. They said they told the Ukrainians in their meeting in Istanbul that you better take the deal, or now that we have four oblasts, the next time we are negotiating, it may be six oblasts. This will be a very good story to end with. Saudi Arabia is set to construct the world's first sky stadium. It will be suspended on 1,150 feet above the ground, and the venue is expected to open in 2032 and will host the matches of the 2034 World Cup. I really don't know how this is going to happen, but let's... One of the things I know about the Saudis is that they've decided to use their vast resources for their own countries. They are looking beyond oil. They are pitching with technology. They are pitching with tourism. They are pitching with so many of the things that has made Dubai, the Middle East, and Paris. They are pitching with finance. So their investment in hosting the World Cup is one, and they could bring out superlatives like this. How possible, how this can be designed and brought to fruition, I really don't know. I can't tell if this is a reality or just a rendition of a dream, but it will be a big one. we know the Middle East has transformed, and it is this transformation that makes them not inclined towards war anymore. And with Israel carrying on with the battle in Gaza and almost spreading it to all the countries there after the attack on Qatar, it was imperative that they impressed upon President Trump that he should hold reigning Netanyahu, because if Israel doesn't want to move forward, the whole countries of the Middle East have decided to move forward. We see all these kind of structures in Dubai. We see them in Abu Dhabi. We see them in Kuwait, and we now see them quite very frequently in Riyadh and in other cities in Saudi Arabia. Anyway, this is where I will end for today. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. If you have any views regarding the opinions I just expressed, please put them in the comment section. Do well to like and share. Until my next video, you have a good day.